Coming up on show 561, the Australian Tesla Model 3 deliveries begin. NIO delivers more cars and Shell installs its first chargers in Singapore. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. In fact, wherever you are in the world, welcome to the show, EV News Daily, edition for Sunday, 25th of August, 2019. My name is Martin Lee. This is what you missed in the last 24 hours. The team at myev.com do help me make this show. They are building a platform for buying and selling and learning about EVs along the way as well. So, if you haven't checked out version 2 of their website yet, you know what I'm going to say. I highly recommend it. A whole new look, lots of new features. If you're a dealer in the US, sadly only in the US, I would love something like myev in this country, then do check it out. Well, one of my listeners, Jeff Lowe, he is the director of infotools.com, sent me a note to say, "Hi Martin, we just took delivery of one of the first 2 Model 3s in New Zealand. Another very happy-looking chap started his induction just before me. I love it. Great delivery experience. I think the Tesla team were as excited as me." So fantastic news. Deliveries in Australia and New Zealand underway then for the Model 3. Aaron Green is another person that I follow on Twitter, at Aaron Green. "Successful collection today at midday. We were the 5th NZ-AU car and the 3rd Performance just arrived in Hamilton. Have recorded all the experience. We'll edit and upload soon. Final stop at Taupo tonight at a destination hotel and charger." Well, congratulations to anyone down under. If you are in Australia or New Zealand and you have got or you are getting your new Tesla Model 3, you have waited longer than anybody else. I thought here in Europe, I thought in this country, the right-hand drive versions of the Model 3 that we were waiting for a blinking long time. You have waited longer than anybody else. And if you have been on that waiting list since maybe even the very first day, I'm so pleased for you. I'm so chuffed. I wouldn't say no to owning a Tesla myself one day, but for now, I can just be happy for anyone that can get their hands on a car key, or whatever the equivalent is these days. An RFID card that you hold against the B pillar. Let's talk about news from down under then. One of my listeners, John Horblow, says he's in New Zealand because I've done a lot of Australian news recently, been talking about Australian chargers as well, and he says to me, "Hi Martin, we used to live in the UK. The Brits always took notice of their favourite nephew Australia, but never mentioned the little chap New Zealand. You mentioned fast chargers in Australia last week and have mentioned Aussie a number of times in the past, but have you checked out what's happening in NZ, our fast charging network?" And he sends me a note. If you would like to check it out, you can look at what's under construction in the capital Wellington. It's charge.net.nz/map. That is charge.net.nz/map. He says, "PS, the EV community down under, in New Zealand at least, is 95% second-hand Japanese and UK Nissan Leafs." Thank you very much for all the correspondence that you send me all of the time. And it's great to start a podcast with a whole bunch of stuff that you've sent me and done the hard work for me. Thank you very much for telling me your stories. If you want to share your pictures, your stories of EV ownership, anytime you're pumped about something, just drop me a note on YouTube, Facebook. The email is hello@evnewsdaily.com. And if you want me to, I can pass it on to the community as well. Well, moving on, and Tesla has announced its expansion into Eastern Europe and open up sales for the Model 3 in selected countries. Electric car buyers in Poland, Romania, Slovenia and Hungary. Well, you can now order your Tesla online, says the website Electrive. An open question remains, though, where and how will Tesla service these EVs? The announcement came as a tweet with some very basic information came out as well. However, there's been the opening of a Tesla store in Budapest. That's planned, at least. And people in Poland have been buying Teslas for some time now. A view on the Tesla map shows an open service centre in Warsaw and one in the Czech capital of Prague, which is not easy for me to say. If you are in any of those countries, you listen to this podcast, you'd like to tell me about your buying experience or your servicing experience, please do let me know. Let's talk NIO next. NIO is still producing the all-electric ES6 in very small numbers. In its debut month, which was June, 413 units were sold. The following month in July, slightly more, 673 units were delivered to customers, according to Pedro at pushevs.com. What makes the all-electric Nio ES6 special, though, is its batteries, and specifically the battery pack. And the cells. 84 kilowatt hour battery pack is pretty big, but they're making them with the new chemistry, the NCM 811 cells. Now, they come from a company called CATL, who are a cell maker. And this new chemistry was meant to be in cars at the beginning of the year. Like all these things, sometimes they get delayed. However, new chemistry means that the battery pack has an energy density of 107 watt-hours per kilometre. That would be higher than the Tesla Model 3, for instance, which I gather some people put, it's estimated, slightly under 168 watt-hours per kilometre. And if you remember recently on the podcast, we were talking about the Chevrolet Bolt and how for the 2020 model year, the battery is bigger, you now get more range, more miles, better energy density. One thing that I didn't question until one of my listeners did actually on the YouTube comments, and I haven't got my PC in the studio, so I can't look up your name. So if it was you, thank you. Does that mean they are now using these new cells inside the battery pack for the Chevrolet Bolt, the new NCM 811 chemistry? Because they've also got some more range out of that car for the new model year. I'm going to go and have a look at that and research over the next couple of hours. Let's talk about oil companies getting in the act of EV chargers. In this country, BP bought the biggest charging network called ChargeMaster, I think for a steal. They basically stole the company for less than a couple of $100 million. I think that was anyway. The real numbers are never announced, are they? But I think they stole it. It was a fantastic price when they leapt to the very top of the charging tree, at least in this country. And now Shell, well, the subsidiary of Shell, called Greenlots, if I'm being specific, they've installed a DC fast charger in Singapore. It's made by ABB, the first of 10 to be installed at Shell stations in the country in the next couple of months, says the Charged EVs magazine. Greenlots CEO Brett Hauser said this, and I quote, "Greenlots and Shell have been exploring synergies since we were acquired earlier this year. This project demonstrates our collective commitment to enable electrified transportation around the world, specifically in Singapore, where Greenlots was founded and bolsters Greenlots' expansion in Southeast Asia." While supporting Shell's EV charging network in Singapore is a logical extension of the work that we've been doing to provide charging solutions at home, work, for fleets and on the go. End quote. No real specifics in there. Hit all the right buzzwords. Congratulations. You think you get bonus points for getting all those away. I would say, however, though, that those chargers going in are only 50 kilowatts. And what does that say? That in August 2019, I can look at a charger that's being installed with a big fancy fanfare, big press release, big PR campaign behind it, and they're 50 kilowatts charge speeds, and I go, it's a bit slow. What does that say? It's how far we've come, right? If they were hundreds or 150s, it'd be fantastic. It's a nice problem to have, right? That's what I'm trying to say. Well, finally, Tesla's supercharging network is certainly a network that hasn't held back, now charging Model 3s at 250 kilowatt charge speed. Tesla's released a rare statistic about their supercharging network. Well, Tesla says its fast charging network delivered, in the month of July, 72 gigawatt hours of electricity, according to Fred Electric. Well, back in 2014, that's a couple of years after the supercharging network was first starting to be built out, Tesla had only delivered 10 gigawatt hours in total. And now, in July of this year, that was 10 gigawatt hours in the first couple of years. Now they've delivered 72 gigawatt hours in just a month. It's incredible. I'll pop a link to Electric in the show notes if you want to read more. Let's get on to our question of the week this week. It was submitted by Brian C., one of the listeners of the podcast, and he says fossil fuel drivers pay per quantity. EV drivers should be forced to do the same. They should legislate. They should ban EV charging by the minute, or connection charges, things like that. Only bill for what you actually use. Do you agree? He said with that statement. And so that's the question you've been answering. Now, we always start with the emails, but I'll tell you what, let's start with the YouTube comments this week. MS Hunter says, charge by minute makes sense for rapid chargers as it encourages people to not use them if they can't use the full available speed that DC chargers can provide, though a few AC chargers should be available at all CCS and shadow mode charging locations for hybrids and AC fast charging vehicles. And you can't really argue with that, can you? If you have a pure electric car and you turn up and there's a plug-in hybrid, and it's sat on it for a couple of hours, and they're just trickling the battery. You think that's a bit frustrating. Hello to Hit Stirrer on YouTube, who says, on the subject of the supply of electrons at public access stations, it's clear to me that all supply should be charged by the number of kilowatt hours delivered, and for access and payment to be by contactless bank card as the default method. If the app fans insist on messing around, by all means, pander to their fetish as an additional system, but don't insist that we all download an app. Hello to Alan Baker, says, I agree with the comment on the prices of electric supply points. They should display the price per kilowatt hour and enable payments by standard bank card, just like a petrol pump. BP are doing this at their charge point stations, he says. Mark Fitzpatrick on YouTube says, I like charging by kilowatt hour, but in Ohio, USA, they charge by the minute. 25 to 35 cents for DC charging. That's right. CHAdeMO is going nowhere, and it doesn't have to. I have no problem for our combined chargers, CCS and CHAdeMO. 500,000 plus people are driving Leafs. We have to have CHAdeMO chargers. We can't just go to Nissan and have a CCS port installed on the front of the car. I love that they're installing new fast chargers, like 100 kilowatt DC fast chargers, especially as the new Leaf Plus can take up to 100 kilowatts. Can it? I thought it... I don't know. But yes, the CHAdeMO standard isn't necessarily being updated on those chargers. Well, that's because the charging networks are often being built by people who favour CCS. Stefan Weilhartner says, no, I don't agree with only paying for the kilowatt hours on a charging station. You have to consider that a charging station is expensive, and therefore if someone parks their car on it without charging, you block the company that owns it from getting back the investment. It's important that a company can make these charging stations to get back the investments as soon as possible, to have fresh money to build even more charging stations. Everyone who parks on a charging spot, whether you have an EV or not, charging or not, they have to pay the same amount of money per minute. And of course, it should be expensive to park in these parking spots so that no one blocks them. Maybe even 5 or 10 euros every single hour just to use the space. On the other side, the kilowatt hours could then be actually really cheap, practically just paying for the bulk cost of the electricity. Hello to ATEEK 1985. Question of the week: charging by kilowatt hour is more transparent. I wouldn't categorically rule out other approaches, particularly on rapids, to avoid plug-in hybrids blocking them. Hello to Ashley Hill on YouTube, says, I disagree. The ongoing cost for a parking space is significant, and some spaces are vastly more expensive to have and to maintain because of security, multi-level buildings. As an example, we're having the issue here in Australia, in Wollongong, where Tesla is only leasing 2 of the parking spaces at a supercharging location, and the other 4 have general parking, even though those other 4 do have supercharging stations next to the parking space. And onto the email. John Joseph says, in many states in the US, EV charging stations are not allowed to actually charge by the kilowatt hour by the state government. Only electric utilities are actually allowed to sell electricity by the unit. My actual experience on Tesla superchargers shows that it's currently cheaper on the Tesla superchargers that charge by the minute, though. Use a better route planner and you'll see, for example, that Ohio, which is by the minute, is cheaper than West Virginia, which is by kilowatt hour. Charlie Fox on the email says, thinking about question of the week, I totally agree with paying for what an EV downloads into the battery. However, electric pricing changes at different times of the day and seasonally. Those changes could literally mean that the location you are getting the power from needs to do essentially instantaneous pricing. I would imagine you need to observe the pricing as you charge, with the idea that you might stop charging, or if it automatically stops, if the price is about to go too high. People might not like that aspect, though, unless the app makes it easy. Hello to Marcus Lafer. Says, hi, Martin. There are too many single-phase charging cars out there blocking charging ports if they only pay per kilowatt hour. Pay per time will push drivers to unplug when they get to 80%. By the way, is the unplugsticker.eu service known in the UK. Allowing you to contact the owner anonymously to ask for releasing of the charge port. No, it's not. Unplugsticker.eu is not a website that I've heard of. The app I use is called Need to Charge, and it's never gone off. But I registered on Need to Charge, and I have it on my iOS device, and I've put my registration number in so that if anybody turns up to a charger and they look through my car window and they see, well, he's at 80% and maybe that's all he needs, they can put the rego into the app, and in theory, it's never happened to me yet, it will then message me to say, hey, someone needs to charge. The app's called Need to Charge. I don't know who developed it. I don't know. This isn't a sales pitch, by the way. It would be great if everybody used one system, though, because then we could all be like, hey, I need the charger. How long are you going to be? That would be awesome. Maybe it'll catch on. I don't know. I'm waiting for the day that it goes off, though. Hello to my old friend Walter McVeigh, who says, to understand why EV charging networks charge by the minute, you have to understand the background. In many jurisdictions, there is only one identity who can legally sell electricity due to utility regulation. In order to deliver the energy required, they need to sell the service through infrastructure utilization. Whether that is a fee for parking or a fee for usage, either way, they can't directly sell electricity. Some providers, in order to recuperate their costs, will charge higher rates for higher throughput. So the question of the week should be, should governments change regulation so that energy can be sold directly to consumers by charging networks? Good question. I'm sure many people would say, yes. And finally, Eduard Pertinez says 85% of petrol price in gas stations is pure petrol reselling. But then you are charged by many other things: convenience, service, servicing speed, customer loyalty, and many others. The other variables can amount to 70 to 30% of the total cost of refueling. So it means that some stations charge you 4 times more for the same gas. Quantity and time are simply constant to one another in gas refueling. We don't get that here. We don't get wild variations in gas prices, apart from petrol stations on the motorways. So when I looked, I think it's about £1.30 on average. I don't know. I don't look anymore, but about £1.30 per litre. I think petrol's a bit more, diesel's a bit less, but £1.30. The motorway service stations will be £1.50, for instance. Well, let's set a brand new question of the week. So, here we go, and I'd love to hear from you. I'm asking current EV owners this week because we have a lot of EV curious people listen to this podcast, so hopefully I can tap into the hive mind of all the EV owners that listen to this show and help out the EV curious. So I'm asking particularly the EV drivers that listen this week, how often do you charge and why? How often do you charge and why do you do it that way? And I mentioned because I drove around all weekend on about 10%. And then plugged it in when I went to a couple of shops onto PodPoint, and that added about 3 or 4% while I got some snacks from the shop. And then I realised that from Friday to Monday, the car had gone between about 10 and 14%, and I hadn't charged it at home for 4 days. And we drove around, we did our errand, did our chores, and wherever we went, there's slow chargers, and we just kind of plugged in and did an hour in the shop or something. And so I realised, we haven't plugged our car in at home for maybe a week. So I'm asking for your experience. What do you do? Do you charge every day? Do you charge overnight? Do you never leave the house with less than 100%? You're a Tesla owner, so you're always like, do I go to 80? Do I go to 90? That's the advice they give. Tell me, current EV drivers, how often do you charge? And why do you go with that pattern? You can email me, hello@evnewsdaily.com. You can leave a comment on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you to 244 patrons of the show. I love Sundays because I get to read out your name. Sundays are the best shows. I get to read out all the names of my Patreon supporters. Phil Roberts from Electric Future, Brad Crosby and Avid Technology, our premium partners. You get a mention every day. But our partners, David Allen, who's been with me for a really long time, talking about life down under in New Zealand, OEM Audio of New Zealand and evpower.co.nz for your spares, your accessories. Hello to Paul O'Connor. Hello to Blake Boland of EV Life Ireland. And to my partners at tryev.com. And all of the exec producers. Thank you so much. Here we go. I love this list. Alan Robson, Alan Shed, Alex Banahini, Alexander Frank, Anders Hove, Arud Giel Skalsveen. Hello to Ashley Hill, Björn Fuchsnack, Barry Penniston, Bob Muir from Ginger Computers, Borislav Borisov, Brent Kingsford, Brian Thompson, Brian Weatherall, Cesar Trujillo, Charles Hall, Chris Hopkins, Colin Hennessy, Craig Coles, Craig Rogers, Damien Davis, Dan Fairs, Darren Bird, Darren Sant, and Yorkshire EVs. Dave Jewson, David Barkman, David Finch, David Partington, David Prescott, Dirk Rotsatz, and Don McAllister, now driving his Model 3. And when he's not doing that, he's making screencastsonline.com. Enrico Stefan Shillo, Frederick Rovic, Freejewel, a.k.a. James, Gene Rubin, George Clargo, Ian Griffiths, Jack Oakley, James Storr, Jason Fan, Jeff Urbies, Jeff Helsinki, Jerry Allison, Jill Smith, Jim Morris, John Bailey, John Lacey from Click Like Video NZ, John Beardy McBeardface and Kent EVs, John Nodell, Juan Gonzalez, Ken Morris, Kevin Masson, Carl Mann, Lars Dallager, Lawrence D. Allen, Lejek Grigil, Louis Hopkin, Luke Cully, Marcel Lohman and Marcel Ward. turn the page. Deep breath. Marlin Shell, Martin Croft, Matt Piccioni, Matthew Ellis, Matthew Gruby, Maz Shah, Mia Oppelstrup, Michael Pastroni, Michael Cuffin, Mike Rogers, Mike Winter, Nathan Gore Brown, Neil E. Roberts and Sussex EVs, Northern Explorers, Zohad Aston, Paul Ridings, Paul Seeger Smith, Paul Stevenson, Perry Simpkins, Pete Glass, Pete Gordon, Peter and D. Roberts and Oxfordshire EVs, Phil Mouchet, Pontus Kinglad, Rajiv Narayan, Ralph Jensen, Renee Schneider, Rob Cooling at appledriving.co.uk, Rob Hermans, Robin Tanner, Rupert Mitchell, Sabby the Cat. Really? Sarah McCann, Sari Kangasoja, Saki Payne, Steve John, Stuart Hanna, The Limousine Line in Sydney, The Plug Seekers YouTube channel, Tim Gutteridge, William Langhorne and Zach Hurst. Well, there are 559 previous shows online. You can listen to those ones for free. Get the new ones first and free and automatically by hitting subscribe. Have a wonderful day. I'll catch you soon. And remember, there is no such thing as a self-charging hybrid.